Hey everybody, I'm Tommy and you're on the Love Boat. What's happening? Hopefully you're having a good day. We started off with a good one. Krista Melinda, good to see you. The bee lady is here. Hey Lisa Ayers, Rocket Queen, Kevin Hawthorne, Lakeland, Florida. Welcome, my brother. Jane Aldrich, good to see you. Susie, what's happening? Boy, oh boy, what a day. I'm sure that, sometimes when I go on after my brother, especially if I'm working on a story. Lisa Trimble, nice to see you. Susie, how are you? The Life of Dennis. Good to see you, man. Good to see you. Roberta Pooh Bear, what's up? How are you? 8 years sober, man. 8 years sober. Roberta, Timothy Glass, Brock Bandy. Yeah, Dennis Dennis from Boston pulls 8 years sober today. We talked about this morning. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. Taylor Miller, there you are. Hey, Jane Aldrich. I'm sure your lovely sister is here. Hey, Roberta. Jeremy Fowler, Miso Smokes. We've got the gang. We got the whole gang. When I go on after Johnny Scoville, especially if I'm working on something and researching things, hey, the Arabian Bard is here. Hello, Arwa. Hey, Amy. I think to myself, I wonder if Johnny told this story, and if he did, you're going to hear it again. You'll just hear it a little different. But today we went shopping, which everybody does. But it's kind of an event when we go shopping. We have met people out there who are talking to us in Spanish, and we're talking to them in English. It's Tommy Bird, ladies and gentlemen, hello and good evening to you all. Hope all is well with you and yours tonight. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the boat ride. Keep your hands inside the boat at all times. You know how this goes. But we're starting to build some relationships with people that work there, and it's fun because when you go in, you know Eric and you know his girlfriend, and it's fun. It's a decent time. Victoria, that's right. And I had the opportunity today. I got in the taxi cab. If you told this story, I apologize. No, I saved it. Okay, good. I got in the taxi cab, and the guy turned around, and we said we're going to the Super Maxi, and the guy turned around and he looked at us and he went, "Americano." I said, "Yeah, we're American." And he said, "What do you think about Epstein?" With no accent. with very little accent. He really his English was incredible. Hey, Barbara Waite. Taylor Miller, good. I'm so glad everyone's here. So he asked me, what do I think about Epstein? And I thought, well, there you go. We really, hey, Dane, we really haven't had people ask us about Trump. We haven't had people ask us about politics. There's been none of that since we got here. It's almost like, and everywhere I've ever been in my life, no matter what was going on politically, I've been to a lot of different countries. And that when they find out where you're from, they always ask you what's going on in politics because the United States is unique that no matter where you are in the world, they're talking about what's going on with the president of the United States. But this was a shock to me. He didn't say, "What do you think of Trump?" or this or that. He said, "What do you think of this stuff going on with Epstein?" And at first, I thought, the question like I said, not much of an accent at all. But I wasn't sure how good his English was going to be, so I started off slow. And when he responded back to me in English, he talked faster than I did. So I got on a roll, started doing a Love Boat, talking about Epstein in this guy's cab. And it was fascinating to me because I got to hear what somebody from another country looking in is thinking about this. And you have to understand that the culture here is considerably different than the culture is in the United States. Prostitution is an accepted part of this society. It has been legal since literally over 100 years. Prostitution has been legal in this country. I keep politics and religion to myself, but I'm always interested in others' conversations about it. I tend not to, especially, my religion, you really got to ask me about it. And with politics, it's slightly different, but it's fascinating to hear someone from another country because I wanted to hear his take. I said, I'd be more than happy to tell you about, and I started to say that, I talk about this a lot in what I do for work. I am an entertainer of sorts, and I talk about this stuff. So I've got an opinion. He didn't know what he was getting into, says Jane Aldrich. Well played, Jane. Well played. You're right, he didn't. And I started to roll, and I told him kind of my theory and this and that. And he sides with those of you who do not believe for a second that Jeffrey Epstein is dead. He said, "I don't think that man's dead. I think that your country, not the Mossad or anybody else," he said, "I think your country hid him." And I don't know if that's the prevailing, and I asked him, is that what everyone in the country thinks? And he looked at me like I was an idiot and said, "I wouldn't know what everybody in the country thinks." Just probably should have been really obvious to me, right? But somehow I thought that this man had his finger on the pulse of all of Ecuador. But And we talked a little bit more, but he said that, it really is disgusting, right? And he used the word disgusting about a half a dozen times, and didn't he? And it's sad to me. It really is. It's sad to me that the bright, shining city on the hill is now disgusting, and it's something that didn't need to happen, right? It really didn't need to happen, and I'm deep diving now. Right now, this is a subject matter that, like it or not, I got my teeth sunk into. Rick Spicer, good to see you. Got to be what, 54 weeks, Rick? 53, 54 weeks. Renee B, good to see you. Sorry I'm late. I'm interrogating my new adopted street kitten. Nice. Nice. Just got into our fur baby family. Congratulations on the addition to your fur baby family. I love that. If I see a cat in Ecuador, I want to take it home, and I got to get over that. I got to work on that, because first of all, I don't know if they belongs to somebody, right? For all I know, it's happy. It just happens to be out in front of a house, but I have a problem with that. I want to adopt every cat on planet Earth. That's an issue, and Squirrel would not be particularly happy. Squirrel has just now gotten to the point where she accepts Katy Perry as her sister. They actually talk in human language, like they meow to each other, which is pretty funny to me. But they do a lot of talking. I don't think Squirrel would put up with another one. I think she'd be very, very angry. I'm not going to do it to her again. Finding Dory, good to see you. Hello, Jules Mark Davis. I'm glad you're here. Tara Jackson, good to see you. So let's talk about this, right? Everyone on earth is looking for a smoking gun on this, whether that be we find out that Trump was dirty and on that island, or but there's got to be something, right? We're all sort of trying to hunt down a smoking gun. And if you saw the thumbnail today, I think we got it. I think we got one. I really do. I think that we've got a smoking gun. And the crazy thing is this. I'm going to put this up on the screen. It never blows up big enough, right? So I could do it but what I'm going to do instead is I'll put this up and then I'm going to read it to you guys. But I don't want you to think I'm making it up. And I got this off of the Department of Government's website. So it's not like, I didn't have to do a FOIA request to get this. I didn't have to spend a great deal of time or effort to get this. And it says, Office of the Attorney General, Washington, D.C., 20530 on February 27th of 2025. Dear Director Patel, before you came into office, I requested the full and complete files related to Jeffrey Epstein. In response to this request, I received approximately 200 pages of documents, which consisted primarily of flight logs, Epstein's list of contacts, and a list of victims' names and phone numbers. I'm going to repeat that because to me, this sounds like a client list. I'm sorry, but it does. 200 pages of documents, which consisted primarily of flight logs, right, where his planes went, the Lolita Express and all of that, and who was on them. Epstein's list of contacts. Now, I read some of the names that was on that list, and a list of victims' names and their phone numbers. Now, we know there's 1,000 victims. So what, he had 1,000 people's names in here, and she had those names. Of course, nobody victimized them, right? Out of their own mouth, nobody victimized them. I repeatedly questioned whether this was the full set of documents responsive to my request and was repeatedly assured by the FBI that we had received the full set of documents. Late yesterday, I learned from a source that the FBI field office in New York was in possession of thousands, with an S, thousands of pages of documents. Well, if you got 200 pages and now they're telling you they've got thousands, what is that, 10 times what you already had in your possession? I find that a little bit disturbing, folks, right? I really do. I find that a little bit disturbing. But in possession of thousands of pages of documents related to the investigation and indictment of Epstein, despite my repeated requests, the FBI never disclosed the existence of these files. When you and I spoke yesterday, you were just as surprised as I was to learn this new information. By 8 a.m. tomorrow, February the 28th, that is of this year, the FBI will deliver the full and complete Epstein files to my office, including all records, documents, audio, and video recordings, and materials related to Jeffrey Epstein and his clients, regardless of how such information was obtained. There will be no withholding or limitations to my or your access. The Department of Justice, the DOJ, will ensure that any public disclosure of these files will be done in a manner to protect the privacy of the victims and in accordance with law. I have done my entire career as a prosecutor. I am also directing you to conduct an immediate investigation into why my order to the FBI was not followed. You will deliver to me a comprehensive report on your findings and proposed personnel action within 14 days. I appreciate your immediate attention to this important matter. I know that we are both committed to transparency for the American people, and I look forward to continuing to work with you to serve our president and our country. I don't know about you, but to me, that sounds a hell of a lot like a smoking gun. If all she had was the 200 pages, we've got the flight logs, all of them, so we know who was on those planes. We know who went to Little Dick's or Little James Island, don't we? Okay, we have his client list. We have the phone numbers and the names of all of these victims, right? Who were victimized by who? By nobody. Or according to them, the most prolific pedophile in history, right? Or pederast, I guess, technically. These people were not children; they were like tweeners, right? They were the girls who were between the ages of about 13 and 17, most of them. But this dude has to be the most prolific piece of trash in history to have amassed 1,000 victims, especially when you consider how much jet setting this guy did around the world. He didn't live on that island, right? He spent actually relatively small amounts of time there, all things considering. Spent a lot of time in New York. He spent a lot of time in New Mexico. He spent a lot of time in Europe, traveling the world, right? Talking to politicians, talking to very wealthy and powerful individuals around the globe. And somebody reached out yesterday, Little Dick's Island. I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to be funny. It's so stupid. It's Little James. I really wasn't trying to be funny. But this is, to me, a smoking gun. I'm sorry. To me, this says, so let me get this straight. You had 200 pages of documents that had not a client list, right? But that had basically his Rolodex, right? Also, the instruction on this that says, I'm also directing you to conduct an immediate investigation of why my order to the FBI was not followed. Now, people can start screaming deep state, you know. They're changing their tune. They're trying to pitch the narrative. In a press conference today, Trump's press secretary said, when asked about this particular issue, that when Trump said that this is, blaming it on the last administration as a cover-up, what he was saying is that now that these people are coming out and saying, hey, we want transparency, they had all of the three branches of government and didn't do anything about this. And there were a bunch of Republicans who were trying to get, Marsha Blackburn, I believe, was leading the charge. And Dick Durbin was the one that was saying, not going to happen. We're not giving it to you. We're not giving it to you. Right? She is talking about being at Jeffrey Epstein's residence, etc. Yeah, this particular set of documents, the other documents that she did not get in the original batch, was everything that they took from the raid on his house in New York. And it sounds like, to anybody that's really thinking about this, that's where the big cache, right, of all of this stuff was. I mean, yeah, they took stuff off of Little James Island, but that is going to make up the 200 pages. That would be my assumption. But the videos, right, and all of this stuff, and the victims, all of the thousands of pages of stuff that came out of New York, and they want us to believe that with all of that, there's not a client list. Now, I believe he didn't write client list at the top of a piece of paper and list all of the people that molested young girls on his island, or at his house in New York, or in his house in New Mexico. This guy had properties all over the place. And by the way, he owned 2 islands. He owned, they talk a lot about the island that he owned. He owned another one right next to it. And I got to see some images today. And I saw them from a video, and I would have been ripping off the person that made this video in a really big way if I took screenshots of it. And I'm not trying to do that if I can avoid it. But it was images of the inside of the temple, air quotes. Always have enjoyed the channel and the man behind it. Well, thank you, Dennis. I really appreciate that. And thank you for the support. It makes a huge difference. It really does. It makes a massive difference, and I appreciate you. Tara Jackson, right, that's the word game. They're not going to, it's not a client list, right, per se. You got the flight logs? All right, why don't you just release those? For real. And the word games continue when they give us that letter that they wrote on the 26th, right? On the 16th of July. That letter that came out on the 16th was super clear that there's no credible list. Yes, we are going to the shelter this weekend, Renee B. Yeah, they had a temple on the island. They called it the temple. If you looked at it, yeah, there was a dang dentist chair in that temple. There really was. There was a chair that looked like almost more like a gynecological chair as much as a dentist chair. It's creepy as hell. But there was also some really weird crap, right? That there are some photos from the inside of his office that came out of New York, and there's some really weird stuff written on the dry erase board behind it. Stuff that would lead you to believe. Lisa Trimble, thank you so much. And look at that. 5 people are turning green. Kellyanne says, rather like the Hunger Games. Thank you, Lisa Trimble. So on the island, they built a building that got nicknamed the Temple. And the outside of it has a whole lot of Egyptian iconology kind of stuff. It looks like they're trying to knock off hieroglyphics and things. It looks very Egyptian. The inside of it, the thing that's disturbing the most about that is that you could lock somebody into that, right? It's a very easy place to lock someone in. There isn't a doorknob to speak of on the inside. It's designed very obviously for nothing good. It's also, there's a lot of dark colors inside. It looks satanic. I'm sorry, it does to me. And it's creepy. But they want us to now believe that there is not any kind, it is a cube and it is a temple. I agree. It is absolutely in the shape of a cube. And you agree with me then, Tara, if you've seen it, that it's very Egyptian. They use gold and they use what looks like lapis lazuli, that color that they used like on the death mask of Tutankhamun, that kind of an appearance. Hey, Kathy, good to see you. Wow, what a cool thing to say. Kathy says, hi, Tommy, I love your show. I appreciate that. I really do. Aha, Tommy Bird. Tommy Bird remembers this. It depends on what your definition of the word is. I'm sure we all remember that. Look at that. What are you doing to me? It all depends on what your definition of the word is. Now, if I had said that out of the blue, people would think I'm absolutely kidding. Satanic cults use children and women, no question. Can you imagine how scared those kids must have been on that island, says Pooh Bear. And that's why I had somebody send me something today that said, God, help us, let this go. Not a chance. Not a chance. Not a chance. So wait, they fired Comey and that's it? Nothing to see here? I'm so confused. Finding Dory. I think that there's been a lot more people fired than just Comey. I showed, there's like 2 videos ago, I showed a little excerpt that came out of the New York Times that said that the FBI agents are being put to polygraph tests. And the polygraph tests are asking questions like, have you ever said anything disparaging about Kash Patel? Now, I can understand why you wouldn't want to have a deep state group of people in there that are going to try to go out of their way to block whatever the director of the FBI is doing. Like, I get that, right? That kind of makes sense. But I'm wondering if they're trying to run out the deep state or if they're trying to run out the people that want this stuff released. There's also some really weird stuff that there are some big names, right, in the podcast universe. There's some big names of people that have shows that have been saying things like they're predicting we're going to see Epstein reappear. And allegedly there's somebody out there that has claimed to be Epstein. Right now, look, this can all be horse species, folks. I'm not putting a whole lot onto this, but there are people out there that are saying that somebody has claimed to be him who wrote "Catch Me If You Can." Who the hell knows, right? Honestly, I can't believe. Apparently, underage French twins were sent to the island for Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, I heard that too. He was a sick son of a bitch. I'm sorry, there's no other way to say it. He was a really, really sick human being, and he wanted variety in his child molestation. He also had a really he was very into the idea of impregnating a lot of these people. He was trying to sow his seed, most literally, He had this transhumanism project that he was working out of the New Mexico estate that he had. Now, that one right there is not, that's not the allegedly thing. And it's not like I'm talking about where someone's claiming to be him. No one knows if any of that's true. There's too many people that have reported on the fact that he was trying to impregnate as many women as possible for that not to be true, in my opinion, right? There's a lot of people that have reported on that. Okay, well, then where are they? Where are those women? Because it seems to me that those are victims, right, that should have a lot to talk about. But most people, I think, are terrified to talk, right? The way that Virginia Giuffre died is really suspect. Her father believes that it was murder, not suicide. Literally on a ranch that wasn't his, no way out or in, right? This is when people say, you know, why don't you believe that this guy may have gotten a new identity and been allowed to live? It's because of things like that, right? It's because of things like that they so out in the face. I have not seen the Katie Johnson video on YouTube, but I promise you I'm going to. I promise you I'm going to look at it now. Audra in Denver, I'm glad that you're here. So I'm going to do a little background really quickly because there are people that come in this and they go, hey, it's the lifeboat. It's Tommy. So background really quickly. Jeffrey Epstein got busted in Florida for molesting young women, girls who were teenagers between 13 and 17. And Ghislaine Maxwell, his right-hand woman, that sort of seems to have been running this entire operation, would find these young women, teach them how to give oral sex, teach them all of these things so that they would be prepared to deal with Jeffrey, right? And he got busted for this. This is a crime, by the way, that should get you an unbelievable amount of time. Yeah, apparently he had an unusual member. I remember you saying a few women were able to identify the movie executive's junk. Yes, that would have been Weinstein. Weinstein didn't have testicles. He had kind of like gangrene, right? On the, don't know the correct word. In a woman, they would call it the perineum. I'm not exactly sure. The taint. But that spread, and he lost the tunic, right? The sack that holds your raisins. So they had to do a medical procedure and tuck one into his left thigh and one into his right thigh. A lot of the women that had come out and sued him could not, you know, when investigators said, hey, he was a little unusual in his build. And these are people that, you know, said that, no, there's nothing, you know, or they would say, well, he was kind of short, you know, or they were sort of taking shots in the dark. And it led you to believe that maybe the stories that they told may not have been as solid. And I hate to say this, but I'm going to. There's a lot of people, and it's easy to say when someone's dead, but there's a lot of people that say that Giuffre had a real problem with credibility. And I feel like, you know, these are young women who are traumatized to the point where now years or decades later, you're going to start asking these people questions. She seemed to believe that that his attorney was one of the people that she had been forced to have sex with, somebody that raped her. And then after they could demonstrate that the two of them were never on the island at the same time, then that she backed off of that, right? They also did not call her, right? Thought Epstein had the egg-shaped phallus. Weinstein had the mutilated-looking one, I think. Tara Jackson, you nailed it. That is correct. An egg-shaped phallus. Kind of sounds like a bummer, doesn't it? And Diddy's is a Tootsie Roll. Did a hell of a thumbnail on that one once, actually. But they didn't call her as a witness against Ghislaine Maxwell, which to me is, I don't know. It seems really odd. This is a girl that we know, like we've seen pictures of her with Prince Andrew, right? We know that someone other than Diddy victimized that girl. That's off the table. There's no way to debate this, right? They settled with her for a ton of money. He's been bumped out of the family, so to speak, of the royalty. We know Prince Andrew was dirty in this, which means that obviously the one victim, right, whose names we all know, actually there's two, right? And both of them said, oh no, it was people other than Epstein. One said she got raped 3 to 4 times a day. So 1,000 women out there had a different experience than the only 2 that have spoken up. Nobody's buying that. Nobody is. Harvey Weinstein had a micropenis? No, Harvey Weinstein had his testicles buried in his thighs. That's what he had. He didn't have the normal set of testicles. They literally had put them inside the guy's thighs and removed what they call the tunic, which is the bag, gone, right? Dardo's tunic, I think it's called. My medicine, my knowledge of medicine is probably not what it ought to be. But yeah, no tunic. They had to remove it because he got gangrene on his ball bag, for lack of a nicer way to say it. Tough, right? Really tough. And it kind of makes you, wonder about hygiene. I'm not busting on the guy. I promise I'm not. This could have nothing to do with that. But I kind of get that kind of feeling at that entire concept. But with the Epstein thing, there are 1,000 victims. They continually say that over and over and over again. Yeah, Diddy is the one that has a small junk by many witnesses who said that he was not very well endowed. And you know what? He seemed really preoccupied by making sure that the men that came over to abuse his girlfriend, right, were well endowed. And it, just makes you wonder. Yes, Roberta, I do. From what I recall, not that Weinstein was a good guy, but he was with grown-ups and not children. Or did I miss something? No, he was not with children. He was never accused of that. What he was accused of was leveraging his position in power as a producer and a filmmaker to force young actresses to do things with him so that they could get roles, which is rape, just a different kind, right? If you're forcing someone through coercion or through your career ends if you don't do this, that's rape. If you're not choosing to do something because you really want to do something, then there's that, in my humble opinion, that's rape. Have I said that enough to demonetize? Should we say it one more time? Don't sweat the small stuff, Prince Andrew. That's well played. But yeah, Ghislaine Maxwell introduced and lured these girls into living a daily life in hell and train them, right? And train them. I think Ghislaine Maxwell is where Ghislaine Maxwell needs to be. That woman should be in prison. However, there's something really disturbing too that you say to someone, we're going to make a deal and we're not going to prosecute you. And then you turn around and immediately prosecute the person. I don't think that would have happened to Ghislaine Maxwell had Epstein not died. Because truthfully and honestly, there's a deal. I read it to you guys. I showed it to everybody here. There was a deal on the table that said the feds were not going to prosecute him. And when you look at that deal, because what the federal government said afterwards was, oh, no. That deal was in the Southern District of New York only for him and his co-conspirators. So you weren't going to get taken to court in the Southern District of New York, of Florida, but we can take you to court in the Southern District of New York, which is where Ghislaine Maxwell was prosecuted. The trouble with that is the deal absolutely said that they weren't going to do it in any place. It doesn't make it okay, right? But the government should never make that deal. What the hell did he deliver? Because as a rule of thumb, they don't deal with people who are pederasts or pedophiles. That's not something where you can go in and go, well, I molested a bunch of kids, but I know where this guy is doing this, this, and this. So if I give you all this information, you let me walk free so I can go molest some more kids. That doesn't happen. They'll do that with drug dealers, right? They've done it with murderers. Sammy the Bull Gravano, right? Salvatore Gravano. The deal that he got, he went into court and admitted to whacking over a dozen people. And they gave him a deal that was not going to put him in prison for life. I think he got it. It was a sweetheart deal. It was like 5 years or something ridiculous like that. I've seen interviews by security that protected Prince Andrew. They said he was a disrespectful person. Yeah, well, you know something? I absolutely believe that. I think that there is a level of entitlement to a lot of these people who are super rich. And I think that they feel like they've tried everything in life, right? And most of them, I'm sorry, but to me, honestly, this makes sense. That a lot of these people in life, to reach the level of success that they did, they spent the majority of their youth really hammering the books, right? These were people that spent a lot of time and a lot of effort studying. And now that they've got everything in life, they're kind of going back and reliving the fantasy of their high school sweetheart by going to this little James Island. You know, Mr. Microsoft. I've seen, yeah, it's disgusting how all of this went down. And if you got here late, I had the opportunity to speak to somebody from Ecuador today, spoke really beautiful English, a cab driver, who said that they just find this disgusting. And hey, Tony Suter, good to see you. I find it disgusting too. I think everybody here finds it disgusting. So in answer to the question of all the people that say, why won't you just let this go? Because if we stop talking about this, I promise you that the government will, right? The only way that we're going to get anything out of this is if we continue to hold their feet to the fire. The letter that I just read, right, that was from the 27th of February said she had 200 pages of documents, and there were thousands more pages of documents. Flight logs, release them. There's no picture, there's no video on a flight log of a child getting molested, right? One of the things they said is we're not gonna re-victimize these people. Those flight logs are not going to be victimizing anybody. Release all of those. Doesn't prove that those people that flew to that island were molesting girls, but it'll give us a pretty damn good idea of who's fighting hard to try to shut this down. Because we know of one name, right? Bill Gates has been really open and honest. In fact, he made reference to the fact that, hey, well, look what happened to Epstein, right? F around and find out kind of thing. He's a creep. I'm sorry. Bill Gates is a creep. Maybe I'll just do a show on Bill Gates. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, maybe I'll just do a show on Bill Gates. They were 14-year-old triplets sourced by Jean-Luc Brunel as a birthday gift. I did not hear triplets. That's news to me. I had read something that I thought said were twins. I did not realize triplets. It's just that much more disgusting. There's rumors of a Wall Street Journal article coming out showing ties between Epstein and Trump. Anything illegal would have already come out, so nothing. I agree. When the Dems had it, they would have released that. They would have crucified that man. They wanted him impeached. If they had that stuff, I promise you that they wouldn't have been blocking the list coming out, right? When Blackburn was trying to get the list and the Dems were blocking it, if they had Trump on that list, though, they wouldn't have needed any help in releasing that. Cab driver, good English? No, sorry, they all speak like that dude on a short haircut cruise that says, number Johnny 5. Now, please get in the back. Okay, I got you. Honestly, I said to Johnny, I've been in a lot of taxi cabs. This was the best English I've ever heard in a taxi cab. I'm not trying to sound bad, but it's the truth. Yeah, Jane, if it's triplets, it's just it's 30% more disgusting. But the fact that there's somebody out there sourcing this, the fact that this is such an open secret that people are giving gifts to Epstein of young girls to molest says a whole hell of a lot about this, this operation, right? This machine that you talk about something that should have been RICO'd. I mean, everything that this dude did, he did for one reason. But some people have left comments and I don't take them down, right? You disagree with me? Fantastic. You disagree with me. As long as you do it respectfully, that's great. But there are people that are saying, hey, this guy killed himself. It's obvious. If he wasn't going to kill himself, why would he have transferred all of his assets to his brother? Because he already knew he was going to get his ass sued off, right? If you know you're going to be going to prison for being a child molester, trust and believe you're going to try to get all of your assets out of your name because the next thing coming is a lawsuit. Diddy, for instance, if Diddy had been convicted on every single one of those charges, the lawsuits would have been, how do you go in and fight something that it was beyond a reasonable doubt when all you got to do is preponderance of the evidence? There are two very different thresholds in the United States of America when it comes to criminal charges, right, versus somebody suing you. In a criminal court, you have to prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt, right? Beyond a reasonable doubt. I'm sorry, not a shadow. Beyond a reasonable doubt. The other would be just the preponderance of the evidence, which from a legal definition means it's more likely that this happened than it's likely that it didn't happen. Well, I don't think there's anybody that doesn't believe that the preponderance of the evidence in this says that Epstein wasn't the only one victimizing these people, right? 1,000 victims. Again, do the math. Was he at at one a day, right? This is a lot of people. It's a staggering number of victims. And we only know of 2 that spoke up, and both said that they were raped by people other than Jeffrey Epstein. Apparently the other 998 were just victims of Epstein. That's what they want us to believe. So no, I'm not going to stop talking about this. I'm not going to stop chasing this thing down, because I think that there needs to be some form of a healthy dialogue. That's right. Diddy has everything in his mom's name or his family's name. This is de rigueur, right? Roberta, well played. This is exactly what I was about to say. Why would he be trying for a bail hearing if he was going to off himself? You know what? If you're going to, this is such a great point. If you're going to off yourself, maybe wait to see if your bail hearing works. And you know what? Why wouldn't he think his bail hearing was going to work? He got convicted of molesting kids and was allowed to do weekends in the sheriff's office. Didn't even have to go to a real jail, and he only had to go on weekends. Don't think to yourself, okay, so he did all of Saturday, all of Sunday, right? No, you do Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But Friday can be arriving at 2 minutes before midnight. You get credit for Friday's time served. Then you do all day Saturday. So now what do you got? 24 hours and 2 minutes into your weekend. And then at 2 minutes after the hour of midnight, they can release you on Sunday. You're doing 24 hours and 4 minutes and getting 3 days credit served. Boy, I would have liked to have been able to pull that off when I was doing time. That would have been lovely, right? And I wasn't in there for the stuff that this scumbag was. The fact that the FBI, right, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, said, we'll give you a deal that we're not going to prosecute you and we're not going to try to seize any of your assets. After that happened to him, you don't think this cat believed he could get out on bond? Right? He got a bail hearing. Why wouldn't he believe he could get bail? Everything has always worked for him, especially in the legal realm. And Acosta, the guy that cut the deal, well, he ends up with a cabinet position. That smells bad, folks. That smells bad. And by the way, you know who gave him the cabinet position, right? Donald Trump. You know, like me or hate me, that's exactly who did it. I voted for the guy. If I had been privy to all of this stuff, if I had believed for a second that they were going to do a rug pull after all of the promises, I guarantee you, I wouldn't have voted for him. Gates have in their will all of their money going to another ultra wealthy dude. Not Soros. I can't remember who. Well, you know something? Ghislaine Maxwell's dad gave all of his money to Epstein. He gave him the Mirror news group in Great Britain. And he gave him the, is it the Daily News? I think it's the Daily News that he owned in New York. Because who doesn't do that, right? For the guy just dating your daughter. They weren't married. And obviously, I don't know what kind of relationship they had, because his interest and his proclivities, he didn't like women her age. That's not really his get down. And she obviously knew that. I think that the entire operation was run by Ghislaine Maxwell. And I think that a deal has already been cut for her. I do. It's for the government to say we're going to postpone this. Very often that means we're talking, right? The attorneys, the prosecutors, all of these people are trying to put some kind of a deal together. And I believe wholeheartedly that that's what's going on. Her appeal was not based on what the appeal could be based on today. You understand that this appeal has been filed for a really long time. And the basis of her appeal was quite simply this: you cut a deal that said we couldn't get prosecuted. Epstein and all of his co-conspirators were protected from the feds. And that's not BS. That happened. I took and put it up. That document that I put up, that's an FBI document. They agreed not to prosecute him. Why? I don't know. It said in there that because of a prearranged deal, he delivered on his end of the deal. So the feds were going to deliver on theirs. He gave them something. There was something that he could give them. And I'll tell you what, folks, it's not done. Talk to anybody. It's not done. Trump said this tonight: based on the ridiculous amount of publicity given to Jeffrey Epstein, I have asked Attorney General Pam Bondi to produce any and all pertinent grand jury testimony subject to. Court approval of this scam perpetuated by the Democrats should end right now. You know what? Here's something else that needs to be said, because One of the things that I find really frustrating, and I talked about this the other night, but if you didn't hear it, the news, all of the different news agencies are saying the Republicans had an opportunity to get a vote on releasing all of the Epstein files. The House of Representatives had wanted to put to a vote the opportunity so that they could release all of the documents. But that's not really what happened. See, that's just a lie. What it was an earmark, right? It was a procedural thing that they attached to a cryptocurrency bill that they knew damn well and good the Republicans weren't going to vote in favor of. And now the Republicans would have to vote in favor of a bill that they didn't want to put through so that they don't look bad, and then you can't get a list of all of the Republicans who voted against. I'm not giving the Republicans a break. I promise you I'm not. I promise you I'm not. But transparency, let's keep it real. You know what I mean? This we're going to put this on the bottom of it's like when there's a bill in Congress for a nuclear submarine, and then you attach to it something to aid with kids who have disabilities, so that they can come out later and go, they voted against giving money to kids with disabilities. They voted against a nuke sub. They didn't think we needed another boomer, so they vote against that. But that earmark gives you the opportunity to make some great commercials when election time rolls around. Well, that's the BS that we're getting pumped by the news right now. And what's odd is both sides of the aisles are giving us the same story. Yeah, the Republicans could have gotten this to come to a vote, but they weren't voting on a bill that was the Epstein bill, right? It was an earmark. It was a procedural thing that was just added to the bottom of another bill. That's dirty. That's dirty political bullcrap is what that is. Even if they release the list, etc., I think the names will be taken off anyway. You can't trust at this point. You can't trust anything at this point. You can't. And the fact that the president's response and all of the people's response is that there's just not enough here to go on. There's 1,000 victims. We've heard from 2 of them. Both of them said they were molested by men other than Jeffrey Epstein. One was very specific with who those men were, right? Prince Andrew was one of those guys. We saw the picture of him with his arm around a girl that was 14 at the time. Obviously, Giuffre wasn't lying. I don't think they would have. I don't think it would have worked out the way that it did for Prince Andrew if that was BS. And the other girl, whose name is escaping me right now, she's a grown woman now, but she said Ghislaine Maxwell should die in prison. I've been hiding. I spent my entire adult life in hiding. She didn't mind coming out and saying her name starts with an R. I can't think of it right now. But Joey girl, thank you. You know something? Somebody said to me recently that as they were starting to get a migraine, because I get them a lot, that migraines are very often because we don't have enough sodium in our body. And I started to develop a headache and hopped up the amount of salt that I was taking, literally put some in water, right? And fired it back, and my migraine went away. I'm not saying that it's a cure-all, but it worked for me after somebody said it to me. And I know that they make a big deal about salt, but the first time you go to a hospital and anything is wrong, the first thing they do is give you salt water in a bag, right? Often bag upon bag upon bag. Think about it. But I hope you feel better. Can we get some ones? Brock Bandy, I think it might have been you that said it.
What?
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you told Johnny that. And it worked, by the way. It absolutely worked. Yeah, Joey Girl, if we can get some thoughts and prayers for Joey Girl, I would appreciate it. I don't believe, use sea salt if you can, right? Absolutely. I don't believe anything at this point. I saw the video, and let's see if I still have this in my little stash of stuff here. They want us to believe that the only camera, see that little black thing right there? That's the only camera in the special housing unit, which means that anybody down any of the hallways where there are inmates, none of that is on film. No way in hell, folks. I'm telling you right now. I spent way too much time in the special housing unit. Way too much time in the special housing unit, which, by the way, they don't say special housing unit anymore because they found it offensive for people who were in special education. I'm not making this up. They don't say segregated housing unit anymore because it sounded racist. They literally came up with special housing unit. It's it's and they have to keep repainting it. So they went, special got taken. I can't remember what the last one was. Segregated, special. There was something else. They can't think of anything that isn't offensive. I find that offensive. But the fact that they want us to believe that there was one camera in the shoe, there's no way, folks. There's no way. I'm telling you that when I was in federal prison, guys would try to damage cameras, especially if there was a cell that they wanted to attack somebody in, a rat, a child molester, whatever. If they knew they were going to go after somebody, they would do what they could to try to damage cameras, especially the ones, like if you're on an upper tier, if you're on the ground, you have no shot. But on an upper tier, you can get at certain cameras. And if you damaged one, that bad boy would be replaced. They would be in there that day. And I got stabbed. Most people know this. I got stabbed when I was at Victorville. And I was on the yard. I was outside walking across the prison yard. And they said to me, "Who stabbed you?" And I don't know how much you know about prison, but the answer to who did this to you is always, I don't know. Right? If you say, well, this guy did it, you're a dead man. You're a rat. Even if it's your biggest enemy, even if it's a different race, even if it's any of those things, your answer always is, I don't know who stabbed me. So I did the I don't know who stabbed me routine. And the guy said, no, I know who did it. His name's Loco. Right? It's a Mexican dude. I could show you a picture of him. And I'm like, you got a picture of the guy? He showed me a video of the guy stabbing me. And I said, well, then what do you need my help for? And he said, because all I see is him hitting you in the stomach. I can't see the weapon, but they did a pretty damn good job of seeing what was happening on the yard. This is out where people walk around during the day, and they managed to have a camera out there that could pick that up. Trust me when I tell you, the special housing unit had dozens of cameras in it. And how about a little logic? So how would somebody get to that unit to get in there and stab Epstein? Well, they would have had to get in an elevator. So can we see the cameras on the elevators? How about showing us the entrance and the exits, right, that anybody would have had to use to get into the special housing unit? How about showing us the parking lot? How about showing us every camera in the entire damn place? They pick one camera out of an entire federal prison to go, well, here it is, show's over, nothing to see here, folks. That's just plain stupid. It's just plain stupid. Why do we care about being offensive to prisoners? Prison is offensive to prisoners. You're right. It absolutely is. And I'm telling you, I was in a segregated housing unit for 14 months or something like that at this particular institution. And about every 6 weeks when we were going out, they were painting over what it said for the name of it kept getting painted over. I said, man, you guys got nothing better to do with your time. It's just downright stupid. Hello. Good to see you. Welcome to the boat. LJ, they aren't telling anything because it's a lie. You're damn right it's a lie. You're damn right it's a lie. And I knew it was a lie when they came out and said, the reason that I got on this, the reason that this thing has stuck in my craw since the first time I heard about it is, here's the original story. He was on suicide watch. Suicide watch in federal prison means you're sitting with a glass-doored cell in front of you. And there's a camera that films you in the cell. If you're on suicide watch, you're being filmed 24 hours a day. I don't care if you're using the toilet. There is no privacy whatsoever if you're on the watch, which is what they call it, suicide watch. So I worked a program called My Brother's Keeper. And I would get paid $1 an hour to sit and stare at the guy. You do it in 4-hour shifts. So I'd be there for 4 hours, then I would leave, and somebody else, exactly right, LJ, they don't take their eyes off you for any reason. In fact, I'll make it a little worse, right? Because here's how, for the first 72 hours, you're not allowed a toilet. You're not allowed a sink. You have to ask permission to go outside to use the bathroom, and they give you a urinal, a little plastic thing like you get in the hospital, and they meter how much urine is coming out to make sure you're getting enough water because there's not a sink in your cell. Because they're afraid you might try to bang your head against it. You can't even have a toilet in your cell for the first 72 hours. So when they said this guy was on suicide watch, I was like, no, he wasn't. No, he wasn't. Because you would have had to have paid off at least one inmate, right? The guy that was sitting there would have been an inmate sitting there. Then I saw the pictures of the inside of the cell. And there must have been 25 sheets, extra clothing. You don't get extra squat on the watch. Now, admittedly, he wasn't on suicide watch. There were bunk beds in the cell. You can't have a bunk bed on suicide watch because they're afraid you'll tie something to the bunk which is allegedly what he did, right? To hang yourself. So you can't have that. You have a concrete block in the middle of the floor that's about this high off the ground. Not in the first, for the first 72 hours, you're in a cell that doesn't even have that. What you have is a mat that's about this thick that you can't twist to try to make a rope out of it. It's like an oven mitt. And then you're wearing a dress with no underwear on or anything else underneath it. And the dress is Velcroed on the shoulders and down the side. So what you really have are two pieces of cloth that are Velcroed together. And it's so damn thick, right? Seriously thick. Why? So you can't spin it into a rope to hang yourself with. They call it the Barney Rubble suit, right? They call it the oven mitt. But it's not something that you could hurt yourself with. That's what the first 72 hours look like. Then you get a toilet. But that's how it was when I was working my brother's keeper. Then I ended up on suicide watch. And if you've been on the boat for any length of time, I explained this. I didn't want to hurt myself. It was nothing like that. They wanted me to sign a document saying that they could transfer me because of the brain diagnosis I had. They wanted to send me to a medical facility, and I never saw a human being come back from that facility. You get sent out for testing, and that's it. It's a wrap. Nobody ever sees you again. I don't mean they're killing you, but you're certainly not coming back to the yard you were on. And I was like, screw you. I'm not signing it. And their take on that was, then you're suicidal. You don't want our help. I'm like, no, I'm afraid you guys will kill me. I'm afraid that the medicine at that, I'm just keeping it real. You know what kind of doctors I think work in the feds? I'm just keeping it real. People that got caught doing the kind of stuff that Epstein was doing. I believe that most of those doctors got caught doing an examination on somebody in a way that they shouldn't. Because anybody that goes to school for that long doesn't want to be a medical doctor. I'm not talking about therapists. I'm not talking about counselors. I've met some of the greatest people in the world in federal prison that really wanted to help people. But as far as medical doctors go, I met one in 13 years that wasn't an absolute hack. I would let Johnny Scoville look at me and decide what was wrong with me before I would go to medical at any of the facilities I was at, except Victorville. And I'm saying that because Dr. Jesus Fernandez was the guy that was the medical doctor there. And he had retired after a long and illustrious career and happened to live about 3 or 4 miles. And he just took a job there. But he cared. Like, he sat down and talked to you. And it was so different that it jumped off the page at you. But for the most part, I found them all really, really creepy. Right? Super creepy. But they left me on suicide watch. The average person spends about 72 hours. Within 3 days, you're off suicide watch. Because by that time, if you're still saying you want to hurt yourself, they're going to ship you somewhere else anyway. You're going to go to a psychiatric facility, right? That's usually where they go. And believe it or not, they will take a person and Velcro them to the wall. I'm not kidding. They give you Halidol. They give you enough of that medication to dope you unconscious, put a diaper on you, and Velcro you to a wall. I know plenty of people it's happened to. Ugly stuff. But I refused to sign the document, and I went in the day before Thanksgiving. So I did Thanksgiving on suicide watch. I did Christmas on suicide watch. And the day after New Year's, they kicked me out. No joke. In that entire time, I was allowed 3 showers. I was not allowed to shave once. No, I take that back. On Christmas Day, a cop took me downstairs to a unit that they called the cutter unit. These were of inmates who self-harmed, guys that would cut themselves with razors. And you had to have a buddy in that program. So you had to have a guy that was not in there for the same reason. And he was your cellmate to make sure that you didn't hurt yourself. And there was very intensive therapy with these people. And they brought me downstairs. And it was a horseshoe, very old prison. It was a horseshoe-shaped unit. And they brought me in there and said, they haven't let this guy shower, right? He's had 2 showers the entire time he's been in there. He's been in there over a month. And guys just started coming in and go, I got a towel for him. I got this. And one guy said, are you cold up there? I was like, yeah. He's like, you want socks? I said, I don't think they're going to let me have socks. And he's like, well, you'll have them tonight. They'll take them from you tomorrow. So I got a pair of boxer shorts, which I hadn't had on. They gave me a pair of socks. And it was Christmas time. And everybody gets what's called a Christmas package. And these guys said, hey, man, you want some hot chocolate? Like, it was all of the stuff that I had to consume before this cop left. And this is a true story. He opened the cell door, right? Now, you don't open a cell door. I got to put my hand through a food slot so you can put handcuffs on it, right? I'm in, even though it's suicide watch, I'm in a shoe, right? There are rules about this. And he popped the door open, and I just looked at him like, holy crap, right? And he goes, all right, we're going downstairs. And I said, all right. He goes, put your hands behind your back and pretend they're cuffed. No lie. It was one of those things that put a lump in my throat because this dude treated me like a human being. And the guys downstairs that most of the inmates would have called freaks were the nicest guys I had ever met. Really went out of their way to try to make Christmas a little less shitty. And if by some chance anybody ever sees this, the guys that were doing my brother's keeper, the people that were working with me and sitting on the side of the glass were some of the greatest dudes I ever met in my life. I got to really get to know these guys. One of them fought Mike Tyson, right? Not BSing. He brought in all of his clippings and he fought Mike Tyson, got knocked out, I think, in the 5th round or something like that. But this is a great group of guys, but they don't allow what they said to Epstein. Now, let's say that he really wasn't on suicide watch, okay, because they kind of changed the story later to say, no, he wasn't on suicide watch, but he had been on suicide watch. So they put him back into general population, which is not true. General population is not the segregated housing unit. Those two things are completely different. It's like saying, we took him to New York when actually they took you to Florida. They're that far apart. But they said that they gave him a cellmate to make sure that he couldn't hurt himself. He had claimed that the mark around his neck the first time was from his cellmate. Did you guys know that? He didn't say he tried to hurt himself. He said, I didn't try to hurt myself. That mark came from my cellmate. So what they do, they gave him another cellmate. And then that cellmate magically got shipped out the day before he ended up dead. Seems odd to me. If you were really trying to protect the guy and you were worried that he was going to do this, why not get him another cellie? You got row after row of inmates. You're going to tell me you couldn't find one that would have been happy to go in there and just get some privileges? Because that's what you get to go in and babysit somebody, I promise. They'd say stuff like, you want 2 trays for lunch, dinner, and breakfast? Oh, trust and believe a guy will step up to the plate for that. So who do we think took out Epstein? A prisoner, a guard, a henchman brought in by, I believe it was a henchman. I believe it was a henchman. But boy, oh boy, they got rid of those guards quick, didn't they? They were being prosecuted because they faked the logs. The cops have to walk every 30 minutes. Forget a guy that just came off suicide watch, who you ought to be looking at every 15 minutes. But every half hour, you got to walk the entire unit. And you shine a flashlight at the ceiling, because if you shine it in the guy's eyes, they tend to get really salty, especially if they're trying to sleep. So they shine a flashlight at the ceiling every half hour. Folks, I spent years in the shoe, literally years in the shoe. And I've never been one, ever, where cops blew off walking every half hour. I've never seen it happen, ever. They got logs they got to fill out. Now, sometimes they'd be 6 minutes late, or sometimes they'd be 8 minutes late or whatever, but they walk every half hour. It's religious. But these people apparently just didn't. And then they filled out the logs. No, man. So they got prosecuted. They pled and did the community service and all that. It was all over before you could go, huh? What happened? The first time I did a story on it, they were already through with their sentence, which was probation and all that. ADSEG inmates aren't outside their cell for that amount of time having a non-recorded phone call. Administrative segregation people aren't allowed outside their cell, period. Full stop. If you leave your cell, you have handcuffs on. Not only do you have handcuffs on, 2 cops have to be with you. When you leave a cell in administrative or disciplinary segregation, either ADSEG or DISSEG, you're in the shoe, you don't leave your cell without handcuffs on, ever. And they have a way that you can use the phone without leaving your cell. It comes on this big, steel platform, 2.5 feet by 2.5 feet, spray painted black, 3.5 feet tall. So it's just about the same height as the food slot. And they bring it on this long ass cord, right? And it comes over to your cell. They drop the food slot and you lean in, you can dial the number and you get 15 minutes from your cell. This guy got 3 hours and 40 minutes out on an unmonitored phone call. He couldn't use the system anywhere inside and not have the phone call monitored and recorded, which means that somebody gave him a cell phone, somebody gave him the cordless phone in the shoe that they use to make phone calls to the street if they have to. But those are the only 2 options. Every other phone in there is monitored and recorded. In fact, you have to enter what's called a PAC number to be able to make the phone call. So you pick up the phone and it says, please enter your PAC number. You type in the number. It says, okay, at the tone, say your name, Tommy Scoville. I have to match my voice because the day I entered prison, the first time I made a phone call, you set it up. They say, enter your name. God forbid you come in sick. Right? You come in with a cold and you're talking like this. I can't tell you how many times, or you get a cold and you try to make a phone call and you're going, Tommy, I'm sorry, your voice doesn't match. Say it again. Tommy. I had a friend when I was in Phoenix who could do my voice. Like anytime he said my name into the phone, it would work. I would go get him because I had such a screwed up recording. But you have to enter a pack number, 9 digits. 9 digits is the pack number. So you enter a 9-digit number and it approves you by your voice. And now you can dial and make a phone call. They're all monitored. They're all monitored. So if he was making a call that was unmonitored, they said that the unit rep approved that, right? The unit boss. Okay, let's talk to the unit boss. Why is that person not in the report? Because that person should explain why they were cool with this dude being out of his cell and obviously not cuffed, because you ain't making a phone call with your hands behind your back. So he was just allowed to walk around this joint like he owned it. Why would he kill himself? What, are you kidding me? You're in the shoe and you can walk around and do whatever you want. Why would he kill himself? He has no reason not to believe they're going to let him out on bail. Everything that's ever happened to him legally, and they bowed down to him. Federal charges, don't worry about it. We're going to drop those. Seize your house? No, we're not going to do that. Don't worry about it. What, a conviction? Dude, you can do weekends, right? Just come in on Friday night, leave on Sunday morning at about 12:02 a.m. You're going to do 24 hours in 10 minutes, and we'll give you 3 days credit for time served. You'll knock it out in less than a year. Why the hell would he have any reason whatsoever to believe it was going to be different this time around? Oh, he decided to kill himself because he couldn't face all the time he was going to do in prison. I'm not buying that. Anybody smart, anybody that, or you don't even have to be smart, but if you've done any time, talk to any convict and ask him about getting out to make an unmonitored call for 15 minutes, right? Now, it happens. I'm sorry. It does happen. It happens if your mother or father die, they will take you out. They will take your cuffs off. They will sit you in the office and they will give you an unmonitored call. A person is going to stand there. The chaplain will be in there to make sure you're not going, hey, listen, well, I got you on the phone. Take some dope and put it in the back of a book. I'll tell you exactly how to, like, none of that's going on. Although it's unmonitored, what they mean is they're not recording it. But there's going to be a chaplain who sits in that room with you. But that's the only time you're going to make a call or be allowed out of your cell if you're in the shoe. I promise this is something I know something about. Sadly, I know a crap load about, right? Not proud of that, but you can't take an unmonitored shit in there. You know something? That's really kind of the truth. It really, really is. Hey, we'll take the X's and the O's for Katy Perry and Squirrel. They're really having a ball in here, chasing each other around. Got very long hauls. They can actually get up to full speed in this place, which I've not seen before. He's probably in another country, face surgery, doing the same thing. Here's my opinion, and I could be wrong. I will tell you straight out, this is an opinion, and I'm only basing it on logic, right? To me, if you're running this kind of an operation, it's like a drug dealer who's doing a bunch of his own drugs, right? Don't get high on your own supply. If this guy's job was to get other people filmed, right, or recorded or whatever on, so that they could blackmail him, I think you molesting all the girls that you're trying to put into the service probably isn't a great thing. And you got to realize at this point, it's like a serial killer. It's like, this is someone that's not going to stop. You got everything you're going to get out of this guy. Why would you reward him? Kill him by any means necessary. Todd says he's dead. I agree. I don't think there's a chance in hell they let this guy live. He's too much of a loose cannon, a liability. But they're not killing Ghislaine Maxwell, right? And people, when it first happened, people said to me, oh, Ghislaine Maxwell is going to sing like a bird. And you know what? Why wouldn't she? Why wouldn't she have tried to cut a sweetheart deal from Jump Street? I'll tell you everything you wanted to know about this operation. Give me 5 years instead of 20. Well, if you're working for the Mossad, right, and you really are just there and by any means necessary, she'll go do her time. I think she probably knew she wasn't going to be getting 20. Dead Men Tell No Tales. Hell of a book, just been written, right? And it's, Dead Men Tell No Tales. The Epstein, that's the name of the new book on Epstein. And they talked to a former Mossad agent who said he was the handler for Ghislaine Maxwell, and that absolutely Jeffrey Epstein was an asset for the Mossad, and that this was a classic honey trap operation, and they set this up so that they could blackmail rich people, politicians, anybody that they could get through this honey trap. And then they could use that as leverage to further the, the aims and the goals of the Mossad, which is Israel's version of the CIA. Now, was our CIA in on it? I believe we are absolutely the same thing. Who inherited all of his wealth? His brother. And his brother inherited all of his wealth before he died. He signed all of the stuff over to his brother while he was still alive. And this happens a lot with people who think they're facing a bunch of lawsuits, like Diddy and his mom and all that. They try to get their assets into the hands of other people, so it will be a lot harder for a forensic team to figure out where your money is and all of that. You know, they sell stuff to people, and you know, they try to get it out of their name because they're a lot less likely to lose. All right, people, I promise we're not letting this die. We're not. Now, I won't come on here and talk about nothing, but if there's news worth talking about, I'm going to come on, and I want and I'm learning from you guys. Seriously, some of the stuff that I'm chasing is because you guys come up with theories and ideas that I don't see. I also have people who send me stuff, and then I chase it down and find things that I didn't know were out there. Yeah, you know, Sonny, it's kind of a scary thing. I really think that she doesn't think she did anything wrong. Let me tell you what I absolutely believe. I believe that if she were to file her appeal today, her appeal would be based on, hey, you know what? If this is a hoax, why am I in prison? If there is no client list, why am I in prison? You're saying I sold these people to no one? I'm a pimp and I sold this to no one? I don't know. Ends up no problem with Diddy. He will be home soon. Maureen is gone. LJ, we're going to see. I don't think Judge Subramanian is dirty, and he has the ability to give this guy 20 years. And I did a show on this where I took the federal sentencing guideline sheets, and I showed everybody how those work and how the judge could very easily justify giving him 20 years. If he doesn't, I do think he's dirty. Even though he beat those charges, the judge can say, I think you did it. The judge has that right in the feds. Okay, they found you not guilty. I think you are guilty. And they can still sentence you within the parameters. In other words, they can't sentence him for what he was found not guilty on, but they can max him the hell out on what he was found guilty on, just so that. Can we talk about your current diet and how you're feeling on another live stream? Renee B., I'll touch on that tomorrow morning. Speaking of which, every single morning we talk about stuff that actually might make your life better. Come by and see what we're doing in the morning. It's pretty cool stuff. Tomorrow we put it all live together. Jane says we have to have faith in Trump. He is playing a genius masterstroke, his own hoax. Wait and see. I'm not. I am basing my displeasure with him on where we've gotten to up to this point. Now, if all of this stuff comes out, I will be really, really happy. If this is all part of the master plan, however, if the master plan is to use the list that he's got to blackmail the people on it, just like the Mossad did, but to push his agenda forward, then he's as big a scumbag as they are. He's as big a scumbag as they are. If the 1,000 victims aren't really victims, and the people that did this to them aren't really going to be held accountable, and this is a hoax, then he's a scumbag. I'm sorry, that's my opinion. But I hope you're right. I hope you're right. Jesse on Fire has sussed some things out in the past that I wasn't particularly impressed with. I like listening to the guy, but sometimes I will go look it out. I'll go check it out. I promise you I will. Between now and the next time I see ya, put a little love in your heart. I am Tommy, and we will see you on the next one. God bless you all. Bye-bye.